Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Good morning. Once again, this is Dr. Sami, your GIS and remote sensing tutor. Um, as discussed earlier, that today we will discuss about the remote sensing or the definition of remote sensing. As you can see here, the remote sensing, that remote sensing. I mean, what is remote sensing? Actually, remote sensing is if you want to sense something from a remote area. For example, a very simple example I will give you that we can see with our eyes. For example, any objects or any objects we can see with our eyes without having any physical touch with that objects. So this is also a kind of remote sensing. It's only because that this light is coming, whether from a passive sensor like sun, or from active sensor like we can use artificial light. In this light fall on the objects, or this light is also called electromagnetic radiation. These light fall on the objects, and these from the object some of the light is passing, and some are absorbed and some are reflected back. So these reflected light coming to our eyes, and our eye is a kind of sensor which detect the reflected light from the objects, and after detection of the light we can understand that which kind of object is there, whether it's a water body or maybe a solid particle, or maybe a man, or maybe an object or whatever. So similar in this direction, remote sensing is the science of acquiring information about the earth without actually being in contact with it. So it's also a science, for example, that these come from long observation and experiment of acquiring information, of getting different kind of information about the earth. I mean, about the earth's objects like water bodies, or maybe the solid particle, or maybe the gaseous particles, about the earth without being actually in contact with it. So I will give you a two example of this. Like one, we have satellite based remote sensing. And the other, we have the this satellite based remote sensing is called spaceborne sensors. Or the other is, we have this aircraft. This is called airborne sensor, and this is spaceborne sensor. So this light of the sun is coming from the sun continuously, and this light, which is also called electromagnetic radiation, this is coming to the sun, and this is coming from sun and reaches to the ground. And then on ground, there are different kind of objects, like I would say, like solid particle, water, or gaseous. These lights reaches to the ground, and from these objects from the ground is reflected back. And when there is a sensor in the space, there is satellites, and the satellites contain a sensor, and this sensor detects the reflected lights coming out from the objects on the surface of the ground. And as a result, an image is formed, like you can see here. This is one of the satellites image. And also you can see we have some cameras in the aircraft, and these cameras or the aircraft continuously taking photograph, specifically in stereo aerial photogrammetry. We are using this image based photogrammetry, and you can see this is one of the image from taken from the aircraft, and this is one of the image taken from satellites. And these image, or these satellites image, we put this into the software, and the software make interpretation of it, and then we get a lot of information. So, this remote sensing is the science of acquiring information about the Earth without being in contact with it. Let me translate this into the more feasible way. Like, for example, you can see here, this is one of the image I took from this source. Like, this is, you can see, this is the satellites data. So this is taken from the satellites which are present in the space. So these satellites goes to the computers, and then we make interpretations of these satellites data with the help of ground truthing. I mean, for example, we have topo sheets and satellite data. We open these topo sheet and satellite data into the computer in a GIS software, and with the help of ground truthing we make a kind of classification which is also called interpretation, and then we classify the entire satellite data into water body, forest land, agriculture land, or maybe barren land. And this final classified map, when we classify, we get the information from remote sensing, that how much percentage of water is there, or forest is there, or agriculture is there, or water body is there. So this is the overall process of remote sensing. For example, once again I'm repeating that we get a satellite's image of any area without going physically to that area, and then also we have some topo sheets, and then we put this into GIS software, and then the GIS software make interpretations or interpretation or analysis of the data with the help of ground truthing, and then it go to the classified. We have a classified map, and then from classified map we are getting meaningful information, where we put this information to the policy maker for further processing. So in this way we acquire information of any area, I mean, without going physically there. This is a kind of remote sensing, that acquiring information about any area, about any objects, without going that field, or without having any physical contact with that object or with that phenomena or something like that. So this is one of the more simple definition. I will go for the more illustrations for more detail. For example, I will explain to you. For example, you can see this is a kind of space-borne sensor, no, this is a space-borne technology. This sun is continuously emitting lights, which is called electromagnetic radiation. So these lights coming from the sun to the earth surfaces. In the earth surface, it has interaction with the trees. You can see it has interaction with the rocks, it has interaction with the water body. So these lights in the objects, for example, it's absorbed in the objects, or maybe some of the light is passing, and some of the light you can see it's reflected back from the objects on the surface of the, which are present on the surface of the earth. So these reflected lights goes to the atmosphere, and then in the atmosphere you can see here there is a sensor which is called satellites. Satellites is a kind of carrier of the sensor, and the sensor detects these reflected lights which is constantly coming from the earth surfaces, and it can detect. So it can detect the light, and the results, an image is formed, and this image is sent in the form of electronic form to the ground station. So ground station. So this is a kind of the entire process of remote sensing, that the sun is coming, the sunlight is coming to the ground, and the sunlight has interaction with the objects on the surface of the earth, and then it goes back into the atmosphere. We will discuss in detail, because it has then interaction in the atmosphere, in the ground, and again interaction in the atmosphere, and then final reaches to the sensor which are present in the satellites, and then these satellites make an image of the surface of the earth, and then it's sent back to the ground station. So and sent back to the ground station. In the ground station we have a satellite scene, like you can see here. This seems to be one of the NRSD scene, and then we get this when we get this satellite scene, we going for the interpretation of this scene. I mean, we put this scene into the computer for analysis, for classification with the help of a ground truthing, and then we classify the entire scene. When we classify the entire scene, and then we have the final classified maps, and the final classified map reflect a variety of information, like for example the forest area or the water bodies or the agricultural land or the whatever. So that's a kind of the entire process, like remote sensing is actually acquiring of information about any area on the surface of the globe without without actually being in contact with it. So I don't want to, there exists a lot of definition of remote sensing, but I don't want to go into that much detail. But a very simple is that it's a kind of acquiring of information. Remote sensing is acquiring the science of acquiring information about the earth without actually being in contact with it. So a simple example, we have satellites in the space, we have aeroplane, and we have drone technology, we have space-borne active sensor, something like that, and this contest constantly giving us data in the form of satellite image, and we open this image in a GIS software, and the GIS software we do interpretation of the satellite's image, and from after interpretation or classification we are getting different meaningful desired information, and then we practically apply this information on the ground, and finally we have a decision. So that's also a kind of that remote sensing help us in the decision making environment for all those area which are out of the reach of human being, or where it's a quietly big area where it's not practically possible to get information. So I think we are not going to that much detail. So hopefully the students, you have some you have know the idea that what is actually remote sensing. After this we will go into much more detail, but first you can have a look at what is actually remote sensing. Okay, so good luck and have a nice day.